Well, good morning again. Welcome once more to the 14th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales and I'm your moderator for this session. As a reminder, all of the sessions are closed captioned. To view the captions, really simple. Click on the closed caption icon and the live transcription. In addition, recordings of each session are available usually within an hour or so after the last session of each day. And you'll know a recording is available because instead of saying join session, it will now say view recording. Pretty tricky. Also, all attendees have access to the library of session recordings from the past 13 years. That's 600 sessions on a whole variety of topics that are searchable by keywords. Um, you have to access it. You see on our website in the top menu is now a link called Sessions Library. So I think you all can figure that out pretty well. Today, our session is from recruitment to graduation, supplemental services to impact adult learner success. And I know anything we can do to keep people in school and graduate, we want to do it. And I think this session will really help. We have with us Katie Taylor, who's worked in higher ed for 14 years, all within enrollment management. And we have with us Kendall McCamey. Kendall, I hope that's correct. Kendall's worked in higher ed for over 10 years in Florida, Kentucky, and Georgia. Both are with the University of Georgia eCampus. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Kendall and Katie.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to kick things off for us this morning, and then I'll pass it off to Kendall to close us out. As Bob said, I've been in higher ed for about 14, 15 years. I've worked in financial aid and admissions equally before coming into the University System of Georgia eCampus. So Kendall and I both kind of have similar backgrounds in that manner. We're going to start big picture and give you all just some context as to who we are with the University System of Georgia eCampus and just to drill it down from there as far as what teams we have, and then primarily what mine and Kendall's roles are with the administrative and student services team and how our roles impact student success, what those data outcomes are, what our hurdles are, and hopefully some takeaways for you guys. So we are with the University System of Georgia eCampus. So we serve the entire University System of Georgia and online education here in the state. We've got many teams and more than just 2 educational initiatives, but basically our teams kind of cover the whole scope of the student experience. So we start with marketing and recruitment and promotion, and then we've got a couple of teams that impact student support and student success. One of those is the team Kendall and I are on, the administrative and student services team. And then we also have an engagement and analytics team that also supports our student success and testing initiatives as well. And then we have a couple of teams as well that support our faculty and classroom environments. That's our curriculum and instruction, as well as our instructional design teams. So all of us as a cohesive unit support eCore and eMajor. So all of the University System of Georgia institutions, most, I should say, not all, are a part of eCore. And so that provides general education to all of our state institutions, but they also provide those courses, of course, on campus. And they can also provide them through their own online environments as well. So it's kind of a trifold option there for students. Then furthermore, we have e-major. So those are full degree programs that we support within the state. So institutions will come to us, and I'll jump onto the next slide to go over that. They'll come to us to help them in providing one or more of their degrees online. And so we strategically partner with them for many programs that we have available. So in that, we have collaborative programs as well as single institution programs. So you can see here the institutions that we work with for those online degrees. This is not a mandate like eCore is. Institutions have the option to work with us for those. And again, they can provide their own online degrees independently of eMajor as well. There's benefits to them working with us, which isn't necessarily applicable to the context of today's presentation. But to give you an idea of the programs that we do have, we have business administration, criminal justice, cybersecurity, financial technology, information technology, organizational leadership, and nursing. And then Gordon State College has also recently come on board with us for the criminal justice program. So the differences between a collaborative program versus single institution, collaborative programs are available at multiple schools. And of course, the single institutions, as you can imagine, are just through one school. So to give you an idea of the types of students that we support, as our presentation title indicates, most eMajor students are adult learners, non-traditional students by age and by responsibilities. So our average student age for all of our eMajor programs is 31. Our median age is 27. And then right at 2/3 of our population are over the age of 25. And then you can see the breakdown even further from there. So we find that, adult students are attracted to our programs for many reasons. Some of those being the benefits that we have available. So we do pride ourselves on having an affordable tuition rate compared to many other top name online institutions, that may be at the forefront of your mind. So we, promote that to students. Within each of our classroom environments, we have librarians, tutors, online tutoring services for all of the courses and things like that. All of our classes also have the same standardized course template, so they're not having to relearn from one class to the next how to navigate. All of our learning is asynchronous, so they can log in at any time based on what other responsibilities and schedules they have going on. And many of our programs have open educational resources, so they also don't have that additional cost of textbooks. So those programs that have the OERs are going to be criminal justice, organizational leadership, as well as our RN to BSN nursing program. And then even some of our other programs, they may not be entirely open educational resource, but they do have some textbooks available in that manner. And then we also provide customized enrollment support, which is something we're going to talk about in depth today. And then we also have credit for prior learning opportunities for our collaborative programs. So those are just preset courses that we have proficiencies listed that students should be knowledgeable in order to make those attempts. And so those are vast opportunities to get credit that way as well, from either prior educational experience that they have, or of course work experience that they have. Again, lending itself well to our adult learner population. So we're going to jump into the prospect and enrollment support. So once our marketing and recruitment team, collects their leads, they'll pass them on to us. There's other ways, of course, through which we obtain prospect information, and we'll discuss that as well. One thing that I didn't mention, since we are not an institution ourselves, but a support unit for all of the University System of Georgia institutions. Of course, all of our services and roles that we play and provide are in addition to those traditional departments on campus. So we're not in any way replacing what those institutions do. They're still taking on those roles and responsibilities as well. We're just an added additional layer to help each of those areas. So in my role as curriculum analyst, there's two of us that serve all of our e-major programs and institutions. Curriculum analyst is basically a fancy word for enrollment specialist. So some of the unique services that we provide that may not always be at the forefront of institutional services is that when a student comes to us, typically they're not coming to us for one specific program. They're coming to us to figure out the quickest way to get a degree or for career promotion and things like that. So we will help them kind of compare our different programs and institutions that we have available in order to identify the one that's the best fit for them. Typically, that is done through unofficial transcript evaluations. Again, just because of the legwork and the time that it takes to do unofficial transcripts for prospective students, we know a lot of times that's a burden on institutions to provide themselves. And so that's a level of service that we provide specifically for our e-major programs and institutions. And it's one of the tools that we use to help our prospective students figure out the best direction for them to go. Services that the other curriculum analyst and I provide that you can typically see on other college campuses and that is supplemental to them is, of course, navigating those admissions and enrollment steps, navigating the application, what documents need to be turned in, advocating for them throughout that process. So just making sure that they're really having a positive experience, that they're not running into any hurdles and roadblocks, they're not getting frustrated throughout the process and things like that, and just really supporting them in their academic journey. So that is one of the big things that eMajor provides ourselves on is student success and student support and making sure that all of our students have a positive experience from the very beginning when they're first initially interested all the way up through taking our classes and ultimately graduating. So I mentioned earlier that we get information about students from multiple areas. So of course, our marketing and recruitment team, they're going out pre-COVID, we're going out to events and recruitment events, and they'll, go to businesses and recruit that way, trying to tap into maybe tuition assistance programs with employers and things like that. And they'll bring those leads back to us. But then us as curriculum analysts, we also obtain prospective student information when they engage with us through our website, our request for information forms, our unofficial evaluation request forms. We will also have, our various eMajor institutional partners refer students to us as well if they want those unofficial evaluations completed and they don't have the bandwidth to do those. And then sometimes students will just, email or call into us through our help desk and things like that. So again, with that in mind, students are coming to us through our website. They may go to our website first before ever researching the individual institution's websites. But since we're not an institution ourselves and our programs ultimately, the degrees are conferred through the individual institutions, a lot of times, of course, students are going to the institution's names that they've heard of, and they're inquiring through them. And so we consider those indirect eMajor inquiries. And because of the way our databases and systems are set up, we don't necessarily always know if a student inquires with the institution first. If they never engaged with us at eMajor through our website and events and things like that, we may not know about those indirect inquiries. And so when I came in, that's one thing that I tried to help improve through our add-on services that I'll speak in more depth about here in just a little bit. So when a student inquires with eMajor directly with us, we have layered communications that we utilize in order to engage our students and assist our students and support them and help them engage in their academic journey and ultimately get enrolled in our programs. And so when those students come to us from our website or recruitment events, they'll get looped into, of course, as is standard for many institutions, an automated email campaign, and they'll get those on a recurring basis with different topics covered. But the biggest thing for us at eMajor is that individualized, personalized outreach that we pride ourselves on. And so we layer that in with the automated information that we send out. We want to make sure that every student gets the same information about eMajor and our benefits, and I'll go over the topics and subjects of those emails in a moment. But we also, want to make sure that that information is personalized to each student. Adult learners are coming in with a variety of backgrounds and experiences and goals. So we want to make sure that they know how we can help them. And so that communication that we have, we reach out to students by phone, we text them, we email them, we ask them what their preferred method is, and we try to, provide communication to them in that manner. But we also try to, switch it up every now and then too, just to keep them engaged. We also have some ad hoc communication campaigns that we use, and I'll explain those here in a little bit as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have add-on services available to institutions for students that inquire directly with them about eMajor programs, and I'll go into those in detail as well. So let's jump on into those. So our automated email campaign, these are the various subjects here that we send out to them on a recurring basis. So it spans out over a period of a couple of months or so. We're emailing them every week to 10 days, just with various information. So some of the ones I'll highlight that we feel are important that our prospective students know about eMajor, introducing myself and my colleague, the other curriculum analyst. Those eMajor benefits that I highlighted earlier, we want to make sure that our students are aware of those. And then we highlight some of those throughout the remaining emails. So those asynchronous class times, course templates, unofficial evaluations, the cost comparison, and what to consider when you're looking at the overall cost of your education, and particularly the opportunities for credit for prior learning as well. So then the individual outreach that I mentioned, some students inquire and then they just want to get the information, and they're not responsive to our outreach, which is totally fine. They just want to start gathering that information and kind of being stealth prospects, as I like to call them, because they're just kind of out there in the abyss, collecting information, and they'll make their decisions on their own. But then, of course, we have a good group that is engaged, and they have, continuous questions, and they're keeping us apprised of their progress and things like that. So we used guided templates with our individualized outreach only because that kind of helps us make sure that we're touching on specific things with our students. But if a student is responsive and engaged with us, then of course, each outreach and each contact that we make with the student is going to be personalized to that conversation with them. And so anytime we end a conversation, we're always creating a task to follow up specific to that conversation we just concluded, to make sure that they are progressing through that application and enrollment process. So those frequencies of outreach will differ based on wherever we left off in the conversation. Some ad hoc outreach that we'll send out anytime we're doing webinars to our prospective students, which we try to do every semester for each of our programs. We'll send out a big blast letting students know that we've got those webinars coming up and how to register and get signed up. And then any students that haven't already applied, we're keeping them apprised of the deadlines for our academic partners to let them know that application deadlines are looming. And if they're going to get started, then they need to go ahead and take some action. So we'll send those out as well. So those are two pretty basic ad hoc campaigns that we'll do. And then moving on to those add-on services, all of those that I just covered are basic outreach that we do to any students that inquire directly through eMajor. If a student never gets in touch with eMajor, our academic partners have the option, they're not required, but they have the choice to share that information with us. So if a student comes to them and inquires or applies to an eMajor program, our institutions can share that information with us. we will import that information into our database, and in turn, we can provide these additional services to those prospective e-major students and continue to follow up with them. So if an institution shares that information with us, the students are looped into all of those outreach pieces that I just mentioned, as well as institutions have the choice to use any or all of these. So if they share information with us, it's not an all or nothing. They can pick and choose what support they get from us. So we'll provide support to their prospective students. If they have applications, we'll reach out to those incomplete students on a monthly basis, reminding them that they still need items to submit for their application. Any students that are accepted, we can send a tailored acceptance email specifically to that institution and program, letting them know what their next steps are at their institution on how to get advised, registered, oriented, all of those things. And then if students, for some reason, of course, with COVID having happened, a lot of students are encountering situations that they didn't expect to happen. And so if students don't ultimately complete their application or enroll, then we'll reach out to those students to remind them and let them know, hey, it's not too late. If you're still interested, we can roll your application to the next semester. Just let us know, and things like that. So those are the 4 additional services that we'll provide to our academic partners if they choose to share that information with us. We find that way, there's a vast array of students interested in e-major out there. We don't always know who all of them are. And so this is our attempt at trying to reach all of them, regardless of which channel they go through to get information. So this is some data that we have pulled comparing fiscal year 20 to 21 based on all of those communication outreach layers as to what type of inquiries we received and what those conversion rates are. So we had a big jump in program inquiries. So this isn't individual students. They may inquire about multiple programs. And so program inquiries, we had a big jump from 20 to 21 at just over 2,100 program inquiries, representing individually unduplicated 12 individual students. And those were direct e-major inquiries. And then in addition to that, we had 1,286 students inquire at our individual institutions directly there, for a total of right at 2,500 total inquiries for 2021 fiscal year. So of that, we had a great conversion rate of approximately 30% from our inquiries to our enrollment. So you can see there, despite COVID and the pandemic and everything else, we continued, for the most part, to see an increase between fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. Less students applied, it looks like, but ultimately more students accepted and ultimately enrolled between the 2 years. So with that said, we're not perfect. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot to improve. Some of the things that hurdles that we encounter, as you can imagine, if an institution does not choose to share their prospective student information with us, that's totally fine. That's their prerogative. But in that manner, we are reliant then on the students letting us know and interpreting themselves where they are in the process. So if we're helping a student for an institution that doesn't share that information with us, we are reliant on the student having an accurate understanding of where they are in the process. So we're at their mercy there and can only help so much. Thankfully, we have great points of contact at all of our institutions and great partnerships. So, if something comes up and we're not sure, then we'll connect the student with the appropriate individual at our partner institutions to make sure that they get on track and have a great point of contact. But yet again, we'll still continue to follow up to make sure those institutions are getting those students through the process as well. Data overlaps, what that references within our current database, we're in the process right now of moving, hopefully eventually as a system to Salesforce, but Right now we have a somewhat rudimentary database that we use to house all of our prospective student data. And within that, there's multiple workspaces. And so for some of our programs, the students in the overall e-major workspace, and then they're in a workspace for their individual program. And so when we're pulling data, it pulls the students twice and it overlaps. And so we're having to fine tune, exactly how that information overlaps and making sure we don't have any duplicates that way. For lack of a better explanation, it's kind of complicated, but hopefully that makes sense. And then Ingress, that's a homegrown database where we track enrollment in eCore and eMajor programs. Kendall is in Ingress, mainly most of his days. So that's where he kind of lives and breathes and gets all of his enrollment data, since he works with our current students for retention. But we try to match between Ingress registration and our prospective student system, and it's not a perfect system. So unfortunately, we don't always have a way to match to identify when our prospects enroll in our programs, because we don't have great data to match them, like date of birth or student ID number, because we're working with so many schools. So we're working on fine tuning that. We've gotten a lot better at it, but it's still not perfect. So that's another piece that we're continuing to work on, and hopefully moving to this new database will help down the road. And then Kendall and I were just talking prior to this. He's great at tracking. He's figured out a great way to use our existing database to track all of the communication outreach that he does. And he's got great data to share with you. But because of the multiple layers of communications that we do with our prospective students, between those automations and ad hoc outreach and add-on outreach and all those things, we don't have a great way to see and track how many times a student is contacted, nor how many times the student responds. So that's something also we're hoping to improve, so that we can show, how successful our outreach is in reaching our students in that manner. So those are some hurdles there. Hopefully some things to take away and to learn from this, though. Really connect the dots to your students about how your institution specifically will help them meet their goals and needs. So, lay it all on the table, make it glaringly obvious what you're going to be able to do for them, and really help them and support them in their journey. Layering those different types of communications, whether it's automated or personalized or text messages, layering all those different communications really helps to engage the students, and it gives them different ways to reach back out to you. One thing we've learned recently is we've started to use Google Voice to text our students, our prospective students. And at first we were utilizing it, leaving it open-ended, kind of like an FYI, and we didn't get a lot of response. So now we've tweaked the content of our text messages, and we're saying, like, reply 1 if you're working on your application, reply 2 if you need help, reply 3 if you can't start now but you want to update your application. And they're much more apt to respond with a 1, 2, or 3, so that we at least get some sort of idea of what's going on. And that's helped a lot. Over communicate. The worst thing you can do is just not reach out to them at all, and they feel like they're left hanging and they can't get a hold of anybody. So, it's better to over communicate than under communicate, and help them eliminate those barriers, and just really, do the legwork for them. Approach it with a sense of sincerity, relatability, check in frequently, and just make that connection. Building those connections and relationships with the students really goes a long way to where they feel comfortable and they know that they can contact you with anything, especially for us, because since we're not at the institutions, I think sometimes I find that sometimes students are, more apt to let us know, like, when there is a problem, and then we'll go help them fix the problem, whatever that may be, so that they're not calling out whoever it is that they're having an issue with. So just building that rapport with them is great. So those are some of the things that we've found really helpful to help, continue with our increased conversion rates and inquiries and things like that in uncertain times that we're all encountering right now. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Kendall for our retention and current student interim support.
Thank you, Katie. Again, my name is Kendall McCamey, and I've been with eCampus now for just about 3 years, and I work primarily with our term-to-term retention efforts. I'm also going to cover some of our interim support as well, and so we'll kind of continue in the funnel that Katie has gotten us started on here. We have what are called call cycles, and these are points in the term in which we are kind of doing a full court press in communicating with students. We're anticipating their needs, and we are conducting a really intentional outreach to try to connect with them about various things that are happening during the term. For example, some of those here are, our first one here is the preemptive call cycle. Students who are registered for 3 or more courses through eCampus are contacted about 2 weeks prior to the start of the term. And really, for one, that's just to make sure that they know where and how to log into the course or their course is. We also remind them that they've got a tutorial course where they can become familiar with navigating the learning management system. And as Katie mentioned earlier, we really standardize the LMS so that all of their courses are going to look very, very similar. They're going to have the same look and feel, and kind of flow the same way through modules and those sorts of things. So just really encouraging them to become familiar with that. We also remind them here and make sure that they're aware of free tutoring resources that are available to them, and also to make sure that they understand how our eCampus course calendar may differ from their institutional course calendar, as a lot of students are taking some courses that are offered through eCampus and some that are on campus or maybe online courses through their home institution. We also have what are called day 3 and day 5 not logged in call cycles. Students who haven't logged into their courses are contacted on the 3rd day of classes, and if needed, the 5th day as well. And really, we just want to make sure that they know where and how to log in there, and then also just to make sure that they're aware that they're going to be dropped for non-attendance if they don't complete those mandatory attendance assignments. Encourage them to do that, and then if we need to, of course, walk them through how to access that material and those assignments. The other one we have here is a re-engagement call cycle. So anytime a student hasn't logged into their course for a week for short session courses, those 8-week classes, or for 2 weeks in our full term 16-week courses, we're conducting outreach to those students, just making sure that everything is okay with them, that there hadn't been some sort of tragedy or some serious life event, just genuinely checking in on them to make sure they're okay. Beyond that, making sure that they're able to log in, that they can see assignments and can navigate the course content, and then as well just to encourage them to be in touch with their instructor about any sort of challenges that they may be facing, and just to remind them that there's some flexibility there as well to make up past assignments, to potentially get partial credit, to move out due dates, things like that. We also have a proctored exam call cycle, which is just to remind students that we've got proctored exams that they maybe have or have not signed up for yet. Some additional interim support information we've got here. We have what is called SEEDS. This is a portal. It stands for the Student Engagement and Advancement Data System. It's an online portal where e-major withdrawals are initiated by the student, as well as our at-risk ticketing procedure is initiated by our instructors. So for our withdrawals, we conduct outreach to those who have submitted a withdrawal request. There's kind of like a 48-hour cooling down period. So once a student has submitted a withdrawal request, there's a 48-hour window there in which time we contact the student. And then after that 48-hour window, if they have not taken action to cancel the request, it is sent on to the institution for processing. What we do on that outreach that we conduct within that 48-hour window is there are really 3 big things that we're encouraging students to be aware of. One of those is we're really encouraging them to conduct, or I guess just to sort of checking with their instructor, right, to let them know what's going on. If there's a life event or some set of circumstances that's maybe keeping them from being as successful as they'd like to be, we really encourage them to reach out to their instructor first. We really encourage instructors to allow for some flexibility, to maybe allow students to make up assignments, to get partial credit, to push out due dates, etc. And so we really want students to kind of start there. If the student does choose to move forward with the withdrawal, before that withdrawal request is processed, we really want them to reach out to their advisor as well, just to check in on prerequisites and course sequencing, and how maybe withdrawing from this course may impact their time to completion. And then we also want them to reach out to the financial aid office. Katie and I both have some financial aid background, and so we're very aware of how return to Title IV can impact students, even for aid that's already been dispersed. Having that aid backed off the account and creating those balances is a hindrance that we've seen many, many times in our work with students to their continuing and completing their program. We also, like I said, that SEEDS portal is where at-risk tickets are initiated as well by instructors. And we conduct outreach to any student who the instructor has identified as requiring follow-up or assistance. In most cases, the instructor has attempted to contact the student themselves via phone or email, and it's usually related to maybe missed assignments or consistently late assignments or just lackluster coursework. And so our encouragement there is really just to make sure that the student is okay, and in a non-punitive way, to really remind them that the instructor is there to assist them in being successful and wants them to be successful, and wants to make reasonable accommodations depending on the circumstances there. The big encouragement kind of with the withdrawal requests as well as those at-risk tickets is we really want to encourage the student to initiate that communication and to really take some agency in their own success, to sort of take ownership of that process. And again, there you'll see we want to do it in a non-punitive and really an overtly empathetic way. So non-punitive is really a big thing there. You may be asking, how in the world, you guys have thousands of students. How in the world are you all sort of managing all of that? And we have what's called a student success team. I say we have a student success team, and in saying that, it kind of sounds like it's a separate entity from the work that we do every day. The reality is, everyone who works here at eCampus is part of the student success team. So we all take a certain percentage of our time each week or each month. Maybe it's 3% for some, 5%, 10%, and we are devoting hours toward conducting this outreach. I wanted to show just here really just a snippet of sort of how those assignments are laid out. Each course on the left there is E-Core. On the right is E major, and so that's why those are broken down by programs. You'll see there's assignments for those courses and for those programs, and we are actively conducting outreach, like I said, sometimes on a daily, sometimes on a weekly basis to students who are either submitting these withdrawal requests or on whom these at-risk tickets are being submitted. And I guess just in general, as it relates to this point, we think term-to-term and in-term retention is kind of everyone's business, right? So there are folks who are part of this student success team who are associate deans and budget people and graphic designers and our web team, and everyone plays a part in ensuring the success of our students. And so that was kind of the big thing I wanted to sort of highlight with this student success team. On the next slide, you'll see here this is just sort of some sample material. On the left is really just an example of what maybe some of a typical term of outreach may look like for one of our smaller institutions that we work with, and how we might visualize and sort of communicate that data back to the institution. On the right is just sort of some talking points about some of our free tutoring services that are offered, within most of our courses. Katie did mention earlier that the average age of our E-major enrollees is 31, and that about 2/3 of our enrollees for this spring are non-traditional students. I did just kind of briefly want to highlight some success metrics. Our non-traditional students, um, and this data is a little older because we're still processing some of our most recent fall data. But for fall 2020, our non-traditional students withdrew at about 23% less than our traditional students. And on average, these non-traditional students had about a 10% higher GPA. So while eCore is primarily comprised of traditional students, we are really finding, just to echo what Katie mentioned earlier, that our non-traditional students are really benefiting significantly from some of those things that we're really proud to offer as part of these E-major programs. We really think that some of this interim support, as well as some of the term-to-term support that I'll mention here in just a second, are really a big part of that. As you've seen so far, you know, a proactive, thoughtful, empathetic outreach is really, I guess, sort of a hallmark of eCampus. And the same, I believe, is true with our term-to-term retention as well. We do conduct term-to-term retention outreach for 5 programs continuously throughout the year, and we've made on average, as you can see here, sorry to overwhelm you with all of this, but we've made on average anywhere from about 700 to 2,000 phone calls for each term across those 5 programs that Katie mentioned. This chart just shows a breakdown of some of the things that we are assessing as it relates to the outreach that we're doing. I'm big on data. We do a lot of collecting. I feel like some days I spend more time analyzing the data from the work that we do than actually doing some of the work that we do. But it helps us make more informed decisions, and we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. I've also found, really, in sort of the research that I've done and just sort of in my role, that the most valuable thing I can do is really just sort of connect with as many students as possible. And so in the simplest terms, I feel like my position as an enrollment and retention specialist is really about relaying and gathering information. And so that's sort of what this shows. The next slide just sort of shows some of our text outreach as well. We've sort of shifted to a text first model. And so I just sort of wanted to break down, you know, how did we get here? Maybe not so much what does the day-to-day look like, but what are some things that you want to be thinking about as you're working with your students and you're sort of planning out how best to support them. So that is, that should be on our next slide here. Really, four kind of big takeaways. I'll just share them with you up front. For one, I think it's really important that and one thing we've done is really establish standardized assessment methods, especially as we're working across different programs, different institutions. Some of our institutions that we work with are, you know, comprehensive universities. They're not maybe quite on the R1 level, but they're, you know, they're more selective in nature, and some that we're working with are a lot more open access. And so how do we standardize how we're assessing outcomes across institutions and programs that attract, you know, different student types? I think it's really easy to think that data people are not very creative, but I think resourcefulness is a form of creativity, and so we really want to try to be creative with how we're pulling together data. Like Katie mentioned, a lot of what I'm doing is connecting dots, and like she said as well, we're in sort of a unique position here in that we serve a lot of different programs and institutions, but we don't always have as much access to system banner data as we would like, and so there's often some great breadth of standardization, but maybe not as much depth as I would like. So we're doing a lot of that work to try to really establish those standard assessment methods. And my guess is that if you're at a single institution, you're probably not having to worry so much about this. Those assessment methods are derived from much more well-defined data sources, if you will. As far as enrollment, we look at duplicated and unduplicated enrollment, both at drop add and at midpoint. We also split these by new admits versus retained and returning students. And then for retention, we're looking at a part of term rate. So students who are enrolled in specific course types that are related to these programs that we're offering. And then we're also looking at retention rates across all of eCampus for majors of those particular programs. So just a couple of different ways there we're looking at that. Beyond that, we're of course looking at course completion, ABC rates, DFW rates, and we're really always trying to kind of drill down deeper. We recently began looking at grade and retention data by demographic, so race, gender, traditional and non-traditional splits. And then we also were looking at LMS, tutoring, and advising data, and always trying to kind of find those correlations between success and some of those factors. As far as LMS engagement, time spent in the LMS, we're even talking about looking at assignment level outcomes by race and by ethnicity to look at equity, tutoring usage, number of tutoring appointments, those types of things we're all exploring. Any data that you can collect, you can connect. And so be looking for those correlations, be looking at those outcomes and some of those success factors that might be attributable there. We're also calculating rates to compare programs and populations. I won't really get much into that, but really that's just kind of the work of sort of determining where a given program or where a given population is as far as what its needs are. We also establish benchmarks. We predict outcomes and we archive our expectations. Benchmarks help us focus our efforts. A lot of what we do day to day is really responsive based on what we see as the immediate needs. So for example, when we're looking at registration patterns, we are conducting outreach based on where a given institution's enrollment is or a given program's enrollment is today. We can be really responsive. We can be really quick and nimble to sort of move in these efforts, and that's part of what this is about, is sort of predicting, not to be right, but predicting to learn. And when we archive those expectations, it keeps us honest with ourselves. We're using a lot of these measurements as well for things like setting course caps and determining how many instructors we are going to need, looking at the number of sections. Do we need to open or close new sections? Trends and seasonality for various proposals like OER that Katie mentioned earlier, the Open Education Resources. And then we also were kind of using a lot of that to set an agenda. Like I mentioned, we're using all of that to kind of determine, hey, what do we need to be doing today, right? What programs do we really need to be devoting our time and effort to as we're conducting outreach and as we're maybe determining sort of where the gaps and where the barriers and where those hurdles might be. Another thing that you might kind of be seeing as you're doing some of this is the need to advocate for policy changes. I always sort of like to highlight the work that Katie does when she's working with some of these prospects, is if they've applied and she's hearing that maybe they haven't heard back in 3 weeks about the status of their application, she's working very closely with admissions offices to see what's going on, or hey, can we extend this deadline out a little bit? How can we kind of smooth some of those things, just to really advocate on the behalf of our students and those who we want to become our students, right? Those prospects. And then, of course, we always want to be refining. So I showed some of that outreach data just a minute ago. You'll notice a lot of phone calls went into some of the pre-pandemic and even mid-pandemic, and we really kind of got to this place of recognizing that calling students just wasn't the best use of our time. We were seeing that whereas it might take 2.5 phone calls to reach a student before, now it was consistently taking more than 4 phone calls every term to actually have a phone conversation with a student, and that just didn't seem like it was the most beneficial use of our time. So, for example, we really refined and sort of pivoted and decided we were going to be more of a text first um, sort of model in terms of that outreach. That really began for fall 2021. We sent about 1,500 text messages in conjunction with phone outreach. In the spring, we really tripled that to about 4,300 texts as of last week, and there may be a few more as we gear up for short session 2. So, um, just a couple of really practical things before we close. Um, you know, I guess some things we want to sort of be asking are, have we is we've always done it this way really the best reason to continue doing something this way? Um, are we thinking critically about what we're doing and sort of how it impacts the students that we're working with? Are we going to be willing to be nimble? And how are we using data to inform those decisions? Really see through a barrier lens. So, what are the challenges that our students are facing? I have a couple of examples, Katie. If you want to sort of fast forward toward the end here, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right here. So, back one. So, just a few things that I've seen institutions do in the past, and actually none of these are from eCampus, but these are just some things that I've sort of picked up on along the way. I've heard of an institution that identifies food insecurity on their campus by cross-checking their enrollees against the state's their SNAP database, and so they're able to sort of anticipate food insecurity on their campus, which I think is a really cool idea. Another institution I've seen and sort of worked with employs a 20-plus year social worker who had recently retired to really connect students in need with some local community resources. And then just thinking in general about some diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations. So um, here we are in Georgia. Like probably many of your states, we have a lot of rural areas. And so, for example, just really bearing with an online student who's in a rural community with unreliable internet access. Seems like once every couple of years we have at least one major hurricane that comes in. And so, are we willing to work with those students on those things? Just recognizing that and being mindful there. How has COVID-19 changed your perception of your students' needs? Didn't want to make this all about COVID, but the reality is, in a COVID and a post-COVID world, it is going to change the way we think about students, or at least it should. And then finally, it's just become really easy to transfer these days. And so someone out there, some institution, some program is going to be sensitive and receptive to the needs of your students. And is it going to be you? And if not, that student is going to find who it is going to be. And so that's my encouragement. Last slide here. One more thing. Just want to kind of leave on this to sort of echo Katie's encouragements as well. Really over communicate proactively and empathetically. Again, we want to be non-punitive in our outreach, and we want to be overtly empathetic. Use data to drive your efforts and decision making. And then again, just to hammer it home, work to identify and mitigate those barriers and hurdles for the success of your students, because ultimately the success of your students is the success of your institution. So with that, I think my time is up. Thank you all. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Drop your email if you'd like. We'd love to connect with you further, and we just really appreciate you joining us this morning. So Bob?
Well, great. Hey, is anything you haven't tried, but you're thinking about trying?
Yeah, I keep a laundry list, to be perfectly honest. Katie and I were just talking this morning about as we continue to scale, as we continue to grow our enrollments, and as we continue to scale with just adding new partners and institutions on board, we really, at least I want to just get a lot more detailed with some of our analysis. I want to do some more data modeling and just really getting just really detailed about some of those communications that we talked about, and how those correlate to whether our students end up registering, and how they end up doing in their courses. So I think just sort of making those connections is something that I really am hoping to sort of press in on going forward.
Yeah, I would echo that. One thing that we've implemented, texting, obviously we've added in the last year that's been fruitful. We've added a chat bot to our website. Casey and I are looking to add a chat specifically to our landing pages on the eMajor website, to where we can log into it and live chat with students as well on a periodic basis. So, for example, possibly after we do like a big round of text messages, we'll that would likely prompt visits to the website, we'll hop on to where maybe they can grab us that way. We've also moved to a calendar model that I didn't mention, to where students, rather than us trying to track down the students by phone, a lot of times we'll direct them in email and text to our calendar so that they can schedule a phone appointment with us. And that's been really helpful. But then just continuing to refine our communications. So a lot of that ad hoc and add-on service outreach that we do, keeping track of those responses and trying to use those smaller populations, like, the students that responded, hey, they want to update. Let's pull that smaller list next time around and do a targeted communication to them based on those responses and things like that. So just continuing to refine how we're contacting students and with what messages.
Well, okay. Hey, I we could probably go on longer, but we're not, because we got another
Yeah,
session in
for
just a
sure.
few minutes.
Our
Kendall
emails are
and
there,
Katie.
so if any of the
Yeah.
participants, have questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to, set up a phone call or via email or whatever you prefer.
Thanks. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Okay.